You know that feeling when you're out in nature, maybe in a forest or by the ocean, and you feel this deep sense of peace? But then, the second you get back to the city, it just vanishes? Well, today we're going to talk about a philosophy that's all about making that connection a permanent part of our lives. It's called the Earthway, and it's basically a guide to mending our relationship with the natural world and, with ourselves in the process.
So let me just ask you this straight up. Do you ever feel kind of disconnected? Like there's this constant, low-level, static buzzing in the background of modern life? If you're nodding your head right now, trust me, you are not alone. And it turns out there's actually a name for that feeling.
It's a concept called earth misery. And the idea is that a lot of the anxiety, the stress, and maybe even the alienation we feel comes directly from being separated from nature. It's like this ache from a connection that's been broken. So the big question is, how did we even get here? How did we break it?
Well, according to this philosophy, the problem really lies in the stories we've been telling ourselves for generations. They're called wrangled stories, these narratives that have been twisted to make us believe that humanity is somehow separate from and even superior to the natural world. It's that old story that we're here to conquer the wild, instead of being a part of it.
But here's where it gets really hopeful. If a broken story got us into this mess, then a better one can get us out. The Earthway philosophy is all about this search for wholeness, and it rebuilds our story by drawing on the wisdom of 4 amazing pillars of connection. These pillars help us remember that we aren't separate from nature at all. We're an inseparable part of it.
So pillar number 1. This one's rooted in a really modern scientific approach to our own minds. It's called applied ecopsychology, and is all about exploring that deep, sometimes unconscious wilderness that exists right inside of us.
At its heart, applied ecopsychology looks at the psychological relationship between us and the Earth. And the key word here, the most important part, is tangible sensory contact. This isn't just about thinking nice thoughts about trees. Nope, it's about rebuilding that connection through direct, physical, real experience. And as it turns out, we have way more tools for that than we were ever taught.
Okay, get ready for this. Forget the 5 senses you learned about in school. According to the science behind this philosophy, we have at least 54 scientifically verified senses. 54! Just think about it. Your sense of balance, your sense of temperature, of pressure. What about that weird sense that tells you where your arm is even with your eyes closed? That's proprioception. Or just our attraction to things we find beautiful. These are the senses that let us really, deeply connect with the world around us. They are the absolute key. So how do you actually start using these senses? Well, applied ecopsychology has this simple 5-step practice. It starts with respect. You ask for consent before entering a natural space. Then you just make nonverbal contact. You let your senses lead the way. You pay close attention to the good feelings that come up. You trust the thoughts that pop into your head. And then finally, you validate the whole thing by writing it down. It's a really deliberate, conscious way of reconnecting.
All right, let's move on to our second pillar. This is where we go from our inner psychological world to the outer physical one. And that brings us to permaculture. This is all about designing our environment, our homes, our gardens, our communities, to function like a natural ecosystem, not against it.
Permaculture is guided by 3 really simple but totally profound ethics. First, there's earth care. That's just acknowledging that the planet is a living thing that we have to take care of. Second, people care. Making sure everyone has what they need to live a good life. And third, fair share. This one is about taking only what you need and sharing the rest, creating this cycle of abundance instead of scarcity.
And wow, this slide just illustrates the difference perfectly. Look at the left, that's the industrial cup of tea. See how it's just a straight line? It starts with taking resources and ends with a landfill, leaving a huge trail of waste behind. But now look at the right, the permaculture cup. It's a circle, a closed loop. Rainwater is collected, plants are grown, and the waste from one part of the system becomes the food for another. It's a whole worldview of regeneration, not extraction. It's just brilliant.
Now, the final 2 pillars ground the Earthway in traditions that have understood these connections for literally thousands of years. Indigenous wisdom, especially from the Lakota people, and Eastern philosophies like Zen and Taoism.
And what's just so cool is how much these 2 traditions overlap. Lakota wisdom is all about learning through direct experience, about really understanding that we're just one small part of this huge interconnected web of life. And then, in a really similar way, Zen and Taoism talk about finding the middle way, this path of balance, and realizing that enlightenment isn't some far-off goal. It's right here in our ordinary, everyday mind. Both of them point us away from complicated theories and right back to our own lived experience.
The Lakota holy man black elk said it so beautifully. The center is really everywhere,
It is within each of us. I mean, that one sentence just completely dismantles that whole story of separation.
And here's the perfect parallel from Zen. The ordinary mind is Tao, or the Way. It's telling us that the path to real understanding isn't about escaping our lives, but about being fully, 100% present right inside them. So you see, all these different paths, ancient wisdom, modern science, they're all pointing to the exact same truth.
And that brings us to the synthesis. This is where we weave all four pillars together: modern eco-psychology, practical permaculture, ancient indigenous wisdom, and Eastern Zen philosophy to create the Earthway.
And this, right here, is the heart of it. The Earthway says that when we live in this connected way, every single thing we do becomes meaningful. Tending a garden, baking bread, fixing something in your home, these aren't just chores anymore. They become these little practices of mindfulness, chances for a deep connection. Basically, they become spiritual experiences.
So the whole philosophy is guided by these core principles. You've got the ethics of permaculture mixed with the indigenous idea of thinking 7 generations into the future, all of it practiced with that daily mindfulness we find in Zen. It's about building a resilient, regenerative culture from the ground up.
But okay, what does this actually look like in the real world? Let's switch from the philosophy to the actual vision of what this can create.
It looks like this. It looks like a world that's been consciously designed to copy the patterns and relationships we see in nature. It's not about those endless, sterile rows of one single crop. It's about a diverse, strong, and beautiful system that gives us food, energy, and a home for wildlife, all in abundance. It's a vision of harmony that you can actually see and touch.
The ultimate goal is to create centers for this way of life. They're described as modern-day Zen monasteries, not in a religious way really, but as places that are dedicated to mindful living, to community learning, and to actively restoring the local ecology. They're centers for healing both the land and our relationship to the land. And so, that leaves us with a question. Because the Earthway isn't just a philosophy to think about, it's a practice to actually live. And it can start really small, with a single conscious breath outside, or just by taking a moment to really think about where your food comes from. So the question isn't for me, it's for you. How will you reconnect today?